So hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2026, 2023 meeting of the WasmEdge runtime community. And, we have two topics today, So the first one is we'll have a preview of the upcoming 0.12 release of WasmEdge. We haven't released WasmEdge for a couple of months now, I think, because we are preparing some really exciting feature for the 0.12. And there's including a lot of, I'll let Haidai talk about that in a minute. So, there's lots of, bringing the runtime up to speed, up to the cutting edge of, compliance with the latest proposals, component model, and also new ways to adding capabilities to the runtime. And there are a lot of those new exciting features. I think you will like it. And then in the second half of the talk, the meeting, I'll do something fun, because the large language models, ChatGPT has been all the rage. When I flew out from Austin, in the Austin airport, I've heard 3 separate conversations from people, waiting at the gate about ChatGPT, right? So it's really all the rage now. And we did something that's really interesting with WasmEdge. So we built a serverless function or a platform for serverless function that allows people to interact with ChatGPT through GitHub issues. I'll show you how, I think this is a really nice illustration of how serverless function could work in WebAssembly, how simple it is. And, and how powerful it is with the new AI models that's available through Web Services API. So we're going to do some demonstration, and we're going to have a have a live application that you can play with it on your own. That's we're going to show you some code and show you how this thing is built. But that'd be the second half of the talk. So stick around. I promise you it's going to be really interesting and exciting. It's I promise you're going to learn something today. Anyway, so let's get on with the first item on the agenda. So Haidai, please, I think send the message to the chat. Yeah, okay. So please start your presentation.
Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome to our very long time to release version. This version, the 0.12. Okay, so I'm doing a preview of the feature and the module change and our new plugin architectures. So here is the first thing I want to talk, which is we have some API change, because in our previous version, each plugin have to define a spatial registration key. So the runtime will need to know which plugin will be load or not when we do the before we really load the Watson application. So we can check if the Watson application impose something does not exit, then we will report error. However, when the plugin grows, we will need to add several I will say very annoying functions. So you can see here we have the host registration, what's the NN proposal. We have a host registration for the what's equipital, and we have more and more in just a few months. So we refine the plugin architecture. Now we don't need the user or the plugin developer to provide this registration in to export this. Our new plugin, will, when we open your plugin, we will load those information from your plugin itself. So there is no need to to switch such configuration in the prepared session. Also, when we remove, the create and the delete API, so we also provide a new cleanup way. When you call the Watson cleanup, we will also, clean all of the registered plugin at the same time. And in our previous version, you have to handle, the destruction by yourself. Now we will handle it for you. So here is the I think it really struck us because our plugin has now we have 10, 11 and more. So if user need to know which registration and function they need to call, there will be just it just doesn't work, so we change this. Okay, so this is the first thing. And also we provide several new CAPI for the plugin. Now you will have the plugin context. So when you use these functions, you can load the plugin from a specific path. You can also list all of the plugin you already load, and you can find which of the plugin already load or not, by looking for the name. Actually, in the previous version, there has no way to know which plugin is loaded. So it will be very difficult for the the users or developers to know actually which plugin is loaded correctly or not. But now you can use this function to check the status of those plugin and those modules. Okay, and because we changed the the registration path, so we also provide 2 new functions, which is you can get the registered module just from the module by name. So this is helping you to know if the plugin is loaded, then the module this plugin provided is also get registered or not in the VM construction. Okay. And another, I will say another very big issue is the according to the the socket part. So first thing is that we change some API for the socket function. So in our previous release, I mean in the alpha release, we just want to create a breaking changes for these features. However, we have some of the users tell us they don't want to break so soon, just a few months and then it break again. So we will create a compatible mode. Even you use the new function and the old function, we will just execute them just like how it just works. Okay, so you don't need to worry about the API change. If you update the socket related library, then our library will just take care this for you. So you don't need to worry about that. But I think once the socket related proposal are finalized, and we may will keep the spec one in the 1.0 release. Okay, so just something very important which is changed. However, we will not we don't want our user to to worry about that. Okay. Another thing is that we also unify the socket address, to 128 bytes. So we can support AF units in our, maybe it's 12.1 release for this new type of socket support. Okay. And we also changed something of our built-in system, our installer. So first thing is that we suppose use libtool to archive our static library. And we also introduce the new installer, the Python, which is written in Python. And because we want to let user to install the plugin by the installer. In the previous release, or I mean the previous installer, user have to download the plugin by themselves. So we need to change the new one and just maintain all of the plugin installation. And another thing is that because we change the way that the plugin registration, so we don't need to ship the WasmEdge process just inside of the WasmEdge release. So if you just install the WasmEdge, now you will not get the WasmEdge process by default. It will just like the other plugins. You need to install and specify which plugin you want. Then this one will be installed. Okay. And we also will add some experimental features. So the first thing is that we want to introduce the read-only WASI file system, which is just add new properties after the mapping relationship, which is the the read-only and or read-write. Okay, these two is just a shortcut. So you can write, for example, the guest pass, the host pass, and you want the read-only or read-write. And just to make the, we don't want to break the previous behavior. So if you are not writing the read-only, we will use the read-write by default. Okay. And we will provide new APIs to limit the random generator file description numbers. Okay, so just to for some very special case. And I just said what's the socket part before, so let's skip this. And just a thing I want to mention is that we know the WasmEdge WASI socket have some function is different from the WASI socket than the spec one. So we will handle it by ourselves to make sure whatever you use, you use the spec one or you use our version, it will just work like you expected. So that's that's the most important thing of the 0.12. And we do lots of bug fix. So I just mentioned some of them. Maybe this will just let you know. So the first thing is that if you are using the threads proposal, we find an error in the atomic notify. So if you are using this, just please check if the behavior is changed or not. Okay. And another thing is that when we apply the WebAssembly WASI test suite, which is the official test suite, I think just released a few months ago, and we find some of the before is undefined behavior, and now is defined by the test suite. So we just change some of our our WASI component to fit the spec. So here is the detail changes, and if you're interested, you can go to our changelog for the detail. And also we fix some of the the WASI proposal. So the first thing is that we fix the definition of the WASI tensor type. So if you are using the tensor type, then the bug is fixed. And also we have some key pair related function are also changed. If you are using WASI crypto, please check these two functions. And also in our previous WASI socket, actually the buffer size may have some issue when you use the gap year edges, but maybe we are lucky, so we find this issue very recently, and we'll just fix it. So I think that's our preview of the 0.12, and just a remark, there is two the major change in this version. One is the plugin, and the other is the circuit related function. And we hope to bring this new new important things to our developer and users to make a better application. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Hadai. Yeah, that's I think perhaps the most, at least to me, the most interesting aspect of this new release is the new way, improved way to add host functions. I think those are some of the much needed features that we need in our runtime. So before we go to the next topic, I'd like to show you some of the. Let me see if I can do the share screen. I think someone has to make me the host. Okay, now I can do that. Yeah. So just to highlight the importance of host function, I think you should be able to see that screen. So this is our Twitter account, and we don't have a ton of Twitter followers. We have like 1,500, less than 1,500 Twitter followers. But if you look at this tweet, it has over 15,000 views, so it's 10 times our viewers, and it's it's 129 likes. And why did it generate such a response? Because there's a GitHub repository. You can see that that's a Rust application that we published, right? It's a PostgreSQL client application running inside a Wasm container. Okay, so meaning it's the application has a Postgres a database driver, database client, and it's transforming some data and sending that into the Postgres database and performing, the normal database operation like create, update, delete, retrieve, right? That's the current operations. The entire application is less than 1 megabytes. When's the last time you had a backend service that is measured in kilobytes, right? It's 800 kilobytes. If you were building that in Java and then put Java in a container, and that could easily be 200 megabytes, right? If we do that in Python, even if we do that in Rust, and we put Rust in a container, the Linux container itself would drag in maybe at least 20 megabytes. I think the standard Ubuntu runtime is like 50 megabytes large, right? So that's so it's a very significant space saving, for this type of applications, and we are demonstrating a very common type of application. It is to open database connection and write to the database, right? So we have a bunch of those in our profile. That's you can this let me see that the Postgres and let's see which this one also has 12,000 views, and 160 likes. What it does is a complete Redis application, so it's a different database backend, right? So instead of have a connection to a Postgres connect database and then essentially writing the entire application server in Wasm and running inside WasmEdge, what we do here is a Redis backend. And the entire application is like 700 megabytes. And you can see the application is also very simple. It's based on the Tokyo framework, and it's used as I think although we had made some modifications so that it works with our sockets, the non-blocking sockets, APIs, but at the API level, it's compatible with those popular Redis clients, right? So it's just a simple statement to get to the Redis URL and then write something in it and then retrieve it back, right? So an application like that, it's again, where is it? Okay. I think, okay, here. Yeah, it's measured in kilobytes. So the above is a demonstration for the Postgres. It's 800 kilobytes, it's 700 kilobytes. And everything else in here is like, the Redis itself is like 11 megabytes, right? So, and we can reduce the size of the, it really highlights the potential for WASM containers or WASM applications to save, to enable, I think, microservice or middleware type of applications in those, for lack of a better word, service mesh, or in the microservice environments, right? So we are super excited about that, and a large part of that, the reason we can do that is because we have ways to add host functions continuously into our runtime, and you will see a lot more of this after 0.12 release, because 0.12 release we already have a Rust SDK that allows people to write WasmEdge plugins in Rust, and so we're gonna import a wide variety of C++ libraries and other dynamic libraries into our runtime, making them accessible from our runtime, not just the database drivers, the sockets, and things like that. We're already seeing we can make AI inference, like TensorFlow and PyTorch available in WasmEdge. Next step, we're gonna have OpenCV, we're gonna have NumPy, we're gonna have all those high performance libraries. And makes them available in WasmEdge so that we can not only have the smallest isolated runtime in a service mesh, but we also have the fastest, because because we can implement that in as host functions, right? And we're gonna be fully compliant to the component model, so that we're gonna declare what's in the plugin, automatically generate SDKs and all those nice stuff. That's I think I'm really glad it's everything is coming together. It's gonna enable very exciting use cases for us. So anyway, that's I really look forward to the new release, and I really encourage you guys to check it out. Once it come out, I think in the next couple of weeks. That's I think you're gonna find it, you're gonna find it very useful. So anyway, let's move on to the next topic. What I really want to show you today is something I personally find really interesting, and we had a hackathon within our team for people to come, for team members to come up with ideas of how to use ChatGPT. We're going to integrate a lot of those ideas into our GitHub management and things like that. So you may soon see those features in our community. And I'm gonna show you a demo first. So let's go here. So this is a repository. It's that chat with ChatGPT, and it doesn't really have any code in it. It's just the reason we set up this repository is because we want to use issues. And what it does is that treats issues like a conversational UI. So you can ask a question the issues, and then it would we write a ChatGPT a GitHub bot. That's the entire automation, the entire bot. You can think of it like GitHub Actions, but except it's written in WebAssembly and running in WasmEdge. And so it would automatically, takes what's happening in this issue and then ask ChatGPT about it and give you an answer. So let's have a demo. Let's say we have a new issue, and I'm gonna ask ChatGPT something that is very logical. That is a math question, right? So let's say this is I think it's probably 6th grade math. So I have chickens and rabbits. Okay, they have a total of, I think, 35 heads and 94 legs. Okay, and the question is, how many chickens and how many rabbits do I have? So this is this is a GitHub issue, but it's it entered in a way that I'm going to ask a question, right? So let's be a little patient and see. Now it's come back. Okay, so what it does is that you can think of it as GitHub Actions. It's ask something and I hook it up with GitHub, so it's a bot. What the bot does, I can show you the code in a minute. But what the bot does is that it goes to ChatGPT and asks the question I have just asked, and say, okay, let X be the number of chickens and Y be the number of rabbits. It set up the equation X plus Y equals. If you ask another question in here, it would give you another answer. But ideally, you would want to keep going on the conversation instead of changing the subject, because that's what the ChatGPT is good at, right? So let's we can so feel free to ask questions, because if you ask anything, it's going to answer. But you would demonstrate its capabilities when it's when we stay in the context of this conversation, right? It's set up those two equations, and then it uses the logic to go through how to solve the equations. It gets to 23 chickens and 12 rabbits, which is the correct answer. That's you can change this, and it would know. Yeah, so that's we can go back to see some of the other questions that I asked, which I thought was very interesting. So why okay, so I don't know if you guys read Neil Stephenson's science fiction, famous science fiction Anson, right? That's it's a novel that I really enjoyed. There may be some spoilers, so so if you have not read those novels, you may not want to look at this thread. But there are things that I don't understand after I read this novel, so I ask those questions, right? Let's summarize the plot. Where does the alien spaceship come from? Is that another planet or the parallel universe? Why did the people live so long in that universe? And things like that. It provided fairly reasonable answers. So some of them may not be the same as your understanding of the novel, but they are perfectly logical. And towards the end, I basically said, there are many endings of the novel. That's it's all happening in parallel universes. And what's the purpose of people taking conscious actions, right? Because if all the possibilities are going to happen in all the parallel universes anyway, why would I make any effort in any particular universe? It gave I think, fairly thoughtful answer to tell you, that's while all those things might happen in the parallel universe, that's it may not happen in yours. That's you can still shape your destiny in that way. Right? So it has it's really something that I find it's very, very enjoyable to have a conversation with it. So what does this has anything to do with WasmEdge? So let me show you the code that we use to build this bot. This is the entire code. That's it's less than 50 lines of Rust code. What it does is that there's a function called run. It's asynchronous function. By the way, this only works in WasmEdge because only WasmEdge can support asynchronous functions as guest functions. Because the way that we set up our that's our runtime, right? So there's you import the Tokyo framework and you say asynchronous function is called run, and there's a single. It does one thing in the run functions to listen to the event. What it does listen to is listen to, in this GitHub organization, second state GitHub organization, chat with ChatGPT is a repository name, is a repository that we have seen, right? And it listens for those two events, issues, anything related to issues, so create a new issue, close an issue, and things like that, and issue comment if there's anything, if anyone comment on the issue. So if any of those two events come from this repository, then it goes to the handler function. So the handler function would be called. So in a run function, it registers the event listener, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just one quick question, Michael. So just a couple of days back, the OpenAI, they release the specific, like the ChatGPT specific endpoint. So is it the same endpoint or is it using like the GPT-3 endpoint?
It's the ChatGPT endpoint.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So that's also showcase the capability here, because the older points, like what they call the Da Vinci points and endpoints, are one-shot conversations. It can't have continuous conversation with you. It's you prepare for it, you prepare the context for it, and you ask one question to give one answer. But the interesting about ChatGPT is that you can keep asking questions. You can keep asking it to refine it. You can, in the same thread. So that requires to memorize the questions and answers that happens in the thread that previous to this current question, right? You could ask them to refine. So, for instance, you could ask them, 10 places I need to visit in Taiwan when I have a trip, and once it give you 10 places, you can say, please refine that to 5 points, 5 places. It's going to cut it to 5 places, and then you can say, translate that into English. It's going to translate, their answer into English, right? So it's an amazing experience, but that requires you to keep track of the conversation state, and part of the effort of building a SDK or building say the SDK here, what we built here at WasmEdge, is to hide the stuff from the users. So it's memorize the conversation states for you, but as users, you only need to tell it what's the current conversation, what's the current question. So as a developer, as a user, you don't have to repeat it, but it knows when to repeat to ChatGPT when it needs to. So yeah, but that's a little ahead of ourselves. So we have a run function, and when this whole program runs, it runs the run function, and it's what it does. It listens to those 2 events from this GitHub repository, right? And then in the handler function, it receives a payload because like I said, if those events happen on GitHub going to send you a event with data in it. So now you pass out those data, to find out what the payload is. So if the payload is to issue comment, meaning that there's a comment being made on the issue, then you do a bunch of those things. First, you determine the user is not a bot, and then you extract the body of the comment, and then send the body of the comment to ChatGPT. So this is a function that calls the ChatGPT. It's there's a Redis cache that sits behind this function that saves the states of the conversation. So you only need to refer the conversation by its ID, which is the issue number here, right? Because each GitHub issue has an issue number, so it allows you to keep threaded conversation in a Redis database, right? So this is essentially the single ChatGPT method. You give it your ChatGPT API keys, which I'm going to show you in a minute how to set it up, and then you give it the question, and then you put that question into the cache, and then when you get a response, what it would do is that it goes to the GitHub API and say create comment, and then put the the answer that come back from ChatGPT back into the comment section of the issue, right? So what you see here is that the bot replies with a comment that come back from ChatGPT. So that's when you get an issue, and when you get that's when you get a comment on the issue. When you get a new issue, it's treated slightly differently. It takes the title of the issue, add a space, add a line break, and then put the body of the issue, and then send that and create a new session at ChatGPT, and then send that to ChatGPT so that it's, then with the respond come back, it says, it's again to create a comment that underneath that issue you have just created. So that's all there to it. That's the entire Rust code. You can compile this to WASM 32 WASI, and however, as you can see, this makes a lot of assumptions. It assumes someone runs this code, right? We're assuming a runtime. The runtime knows to call the run function, and then knows how to connect to the GitHub API to receive those events from GitHub, to register a callback loop, a callback webhook with GitHub APIs, so that GitHub knows to send the the events to the server that runs this function. And then when it calls ChatGPT, it knows how to find the ChatGPT API keys by its name. So here I have a name called Chat Michael, which is my API key. And I don't want to put my API key as plain text in the code, right? So I give it a name. And but how to map this name to the API key is another service that this that this Rust code has to know how to figure out. And then, like I said, the way ChatGPT works is that it needs you to keep track of the conversation history, and the conversation history is also keep tracked in like I said, in a Redis database. So this is not a standalone Rust function that you can just compile and run. Once you compile into WebAssembly, you need a set of host functions that perform those functions, that perform those features, right? So when it says chat completion, it knows where to find, the actual, host function that makes the HTTPS request that goes to ChatGPT, right? So you would need all that. So the runtime for all that is another part. Is a platform. That's for lack of better words. Let me see if I can do this. Yeah, it's a platform called Flows.network. This is still a work in progress. We really didn't want to release it, prematurely. So we only want to talk about it in a community meeting here. So we don't really want to talk about it in Twitter yet. So you can, what it does is that you can create, say, if you create a flow, what you import a GitHub repository that contains the code that I've just shown. And what the flows.network does, it is going to compile the code and build a serverless function for you. And once it builds a serverless function, it's going to detect which service you are using in that function. So, for instance, in this particular, when I built the source code I have just shown you, it find out that I'm using 2 external connections that I need to set up in order for my code to function properly. One is that I need to connect the code to GitHub so that I can receive those GitHub events, right? Because it runs on this domain called flows.network. But GitHub needs to know, when I create a new issue, where does it send the issue to? When I create a new comments, where does it send the events to, right? And so by having this connect and log into GitHub and then select the GitHub repository that you want to listen for, you establish this connection so that GitHub knows to send you those events. And similarly, when I do the ChatGPT stuff, that's I'm referring to my API key by its name, by Chat Michael. The actual API key that behind Chat Michael is by clicking on this button. That's it would give you. If I do this, I hope it doesn't mess up anything. But yeah, that's so it basically tells you. You give it a nickname and then put the API key here, so you can refer to this API key in your code by its nickname instead of by the key, right? So you could, by setting up those 2 connections, you could now you have a serverless function that's running, that is ready to receive events from GitHub, and then query ChatGPT, and then send the response back to GitHub, right? That's all done with very simple Rust code that we have just seen, right? So that's really all there to it. There are some logs. You can see, when it was compiled on the server, what it looks like. You can see the flow logs. That's if there's any errors, or if you print anything to the console, it's going to show up here. So it's a really an easy way for people to build WasmEdge functions, and then upload those WasmEdge functions into a serverless function platform, and then have the serverless function platform connected to other services out there, be it ChatGPT or GitHub, or you could easily build a Discord bot or a Slack bot using ChatGPT or using other mechanisms here. So that's so in fact, we have packed together multiple, bots, in our own Slack channels. And we are thinking about whether we should make it public in our public Slack channels. But maybe the next step we could do that with our Discord server at some point, right? So to have them to have ChatGPT or have humans answer some questions, or to have some to start some automations. For instance, when there's something happening in GitHub, when there's something need to be merged, we can escalate that to Slack, or we can escalate that to email or to Discord, so there are lots of things that that we can do here, as you can imagine. So yeah, let me see if there's any other chat messages. Okay, so Shiwei asked the two questions. And this is support for streaming data? Not yet. It's right now it's blocks until it finishes, right? So it's it waits for the ChatGPT API to return all its data, and then it returns back to depending on whether it's a GitHub bot or it's a Slack bot, it writes back in one go, because I don't think there's a way in the GitHub issue bot to stream back data into an issue response, right? You have to have all the text ready before you make that API call, right? In Slack there may be, but but that's but at this moment we are going to wait for ChatGPT to return all its data and then come back. One of the things that's I want to bring attention to is that once the thread is idle for 10 minutes, it will lose its context, because our Redis cache expires in 10 minutes, right? Because after 10 minutes, it doesn't remember its conversation state anymore. It's going to start a new conversation. So you would find, if you find an old thread in an issue and ask another question in it, it will kind of treat it like a brand new question. It will not remember the context. So I think the best way to experience that really is to start a new thread and keep asking questions, right? So that's the first one. Also, since it's running on WasmEdge, does Flow Network support all the dependencies out of the box? One of the interesting about Wasm at this moment, without component model, is that it does build all the dependencies in it into the Wasm binary itself, right? So if you say, that's why it's also super interesting, the tweet I just showed you, say the Redis kind or the Postgres kind, it actually is not a dynamic application that has external dependencies. That's zero external dependency. It has all from the socket level up, it has everything is needed in that 800 kilobytes, right? So that's pretty much the same thing for the WasmEdge flow function as well. The reason it has to run on the Flow.network platform is because all those host functions the platform has to provide. For instance, because in the code you can see that listen to event, right? How do you listen to the event? How do you because in order to listen for event, you have to send your event callback webhook to the GitHub API to register that with GitHub API. What is that URL? That's where are you running? That's all figured out at runtime by Flow.network, and it's gonna collect its own. It knows its own public IP address. It knows the authentication tokens. It performs the OAuth flow with GitHub, and after that, it would register itself into GitHub so that it's gonna receive the event from GitHub, right? So the same with Slack. How do you receive those events from? When you put the bot into a Slack channel, you are going to receive the messages from Slack channel, or at least when the bot was tagged, when someone adds the bot, you're going to receive the flow function going to receive the message. How does it know to receive? How does Slack know where to send this message? It is because it is running on on the server platform called Flow.network. So in that regard, in that sense, it does have there's a dependency environment, so to speak, that's the Flow.network provide. But as far as Wasm is concerned, today all Wasm application has all the dependencies ever would need, because it's all, you can imagine it's all statically linked, right? So yeah. So how to develop new connectors for flow-star networks? This is something we need to write documentation, because this happens too fast, because without OpenAI or ChatGPT, we would probably wait until 0.12 to release, and then after that we may say look, people, we have a new cloud service, it's called flow-star network, and we can let people try that. But because of the ChatGPT stuff, we really want to show some of the capabilities that we have built into our platform. So, so we don't have a really good documentation that's written up yet. But all the connectors, interesting, all the connectors in flow-star network are also running inside WasmEdge. So it's not just the flow functions, the bots are running inside WasmEdge. Are the the agent that performs the OAuth with GitHub is also running inside. It's also a WASM function, right? So there's but that said, we need to write it up and have better documentation. So stay tuned. So Seb, I know I'm gonna see you in a couple of weeks in Barcelona, right? So that's we can definitely talk about this. So. All right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So any questions? That's let me put the link here, so that you all can go and play with it. I think it's really fairly just raise a new issue, ask about WebAssembly, Okay, what's your best guesstimate for the release date of 0.12? Hi, Dai, would you like to answer that? Okay, so I asked the previous question within 2 weeks, definitely. My hope is this week, but we're gonna have a new alpha release this week. So so the final release may still be another week away. But I think we are really close. All the feature PRs have been merged, so now it's time to run all the regression tests and all that stuff. Yeah, so there's Shiva, you have a lot of great ideas. That's create your own flow function and, deploy your own. Tell us about it. That's we'd love to see. We'd love to see this not just as GitHub issues, but as this GitHub discussions. I think I agree. It's probably a better, more appropriate place to do that. And maybe it can analyze a PDF attachment. There are lots of things. With ChatGPT, you can give a URL and say, read this link and summarize it for me. Have you guys seen that Chat PDF, which is really popular? Is that you give it a PDF document, like a book, and ask it to read it. And then you can ask questions about it. You can have a conversation about it, and not just a summary of what's in the PDF, but you can ask about characters. You can ask about a lot of things. So it's super fun. It's I'd love to see people building this type of functionalities into into the flow functions as well. So. So say if we clone to experiment with Ripple now, do we connect to other databases than Redis? Oh, if the question is about the flow-star network, you don't need to worry about Redis or Postgres or any of the databases, because the database exists on the flow-star network. You just use the SDK. When you use the SDK to say, get me this API key by this name, it's automatically returns the API keys. Under the hood, it gets that from the database, right? If you say send another question to ChatGPT under the thread issue XYZ, it would fetch the history of this thread from from Redis and append that new question to the thread and send that to ChatGPT. So that's the whole process transparent to you. So you don't need to worry about all that. And if the question is the two tweets, that's did we, you can go find that tweet because each of them has a GitHub repository attached to it. That's you can go to GitHub and look at the code. Those are really very simple code where where you do need to start your own Redis server or your Postgres server, but you can also use cloud servers. You can get Postgres from one of the cloud providers or Redis from Upstash, right? You get one of the instances and then you put that into your Rust source code to connect to it. And then, you can operate on it and then compile the whole thing into WebAssembly and run it in WasmEdge, and that's it, right? That's, you get lightweight containerization once you do that. Yeah. All right, so well, I guess that's all we have here, and it's I think the flow function stuff and the ChatGPT stuff, it's a great distraction, while we're waiting for 0.12 to release, we really appreciate everybody's contributions and help in our community. And I think we are on the edge of some great use cases. I have talked to a number of big companies, and they were all super excited, using WasmEdge as a runner for microservices in a service mesh, in the database UDFs, and also in situations like in flow functions where you have a serverless reactive function where it's triggered by something else on the internet or triggered by messaging queue, right? So there's lots of super interesting use cases, I think, that's that we're going to enable very soon with, the next release of WasmEdge going to be a great milestone for, that would enable the community to add a lot more features to the WasmEdge runtime. So, yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So we are, like always, we're gonna have a YouTube recording of this, and we're gonna make it available, and just try out everything that we said. Just go to this GitHub repository and ask questions. It's really easy. That's and I promise you, it's really fun. Anyway, so I think that's all I have, and thank you very much. And you know how to find us. Always on GitHub, and also find it, contact us on email or GitHub issues if you have any questions. So until that's we're gonna focus on getting the new release released, in the next 2 weeks. And until then, everybody have fun and take care. And we're gonna see you next week then, next month. Thank you very much. Yeah.